So I'm Samantha Stoltz, and I'm with TnAchieves International. I'm on the communications committee. And this day we are with Jazmin Grimm, and she is from Middle Tennessee TnAchieves. And I'm going to just ask her a couple of questions specifically about how her community is using marketing tools. And a new tool for some of our communities for TnAchieves is text messaging specifically. So Jazmin, just kind of letting you take it away, who you are, what weekend you went through, something kind of fun about you.
Yeah, so greetings. I'm Jazmin Grimm, and like Samantha said, I went through Middle Tennessee TnAchieves, number 43. So my husband and I went through, during the time that I went through, we actually were not married nor engaged. And so shortly after I went through, we got engaged, and then now here we are married. So happy to be here today and excited to see what the Lord has in store.
So what I'm hearing is TnAchieves made you guys get married.
Yes, basically everyone asking when we were going to get married forced us to get married, basically.
Peer pressure works.
Peer pressure.
So tell me a little bit about just kind of your walk with Christ post TnAchieves, what maybe it was like before, what are some things that you maybe learned on the weekend, or just how your walk with Christ was before and then after TnAchieves.
Yeah, so I go to One Stone Nashville, which is in East Nashville. It's a little bit obviously east of Nashville. And so during my time at TnAchieves, it was a unique experience because I'm so used to kind of being in leadership and really just not being served, but being the one that's serving other people. So it was a little different for me. But it was absolutely life-changing in that I got to see people open up and realize that everybody has stuff that they're going through, and no matter what they say or how pretty they are or how happy they look, like people have been through, and everyone's been through something significant that's made them who they are today. So I think going through TnAchieves, that was the biggest impact on me. Was it changed my perspective on people in general, and how I interact with everybody that I come in contact with.
Wow, that's awesome. Can you talk about what basically made you attend a TnAchieves weekend? What song and dance your sponsor did to convince you to attend a weekend?
Yeah, so there wasn't much convincing. I had been asked a couple weekends, well, several years prior. So when are you going to go through Trace? Like most people, like a lot of people. In leadership, it's almost like a common thing. You go through Trace, especially because One Stone, we have a lot of people in our congregation that are very involved in the Middle Tennessee TnAchieves community. And so I knew that the Lord really was not leading me there until I was with the person that I wanted to marry. And so that's kind of why I said no and put it on the back burner for so many years. But Natalie Dohanis, that is who sponsored me to go through, one of my best friends, one of the, I'm probably partial, but probably one of the best people you'll ever meet in your life.
Okay.
She is very, very connected with the community, and just not only the TnAchieves community, but also the Sumner County, Davidson County community, and Middle Tennessee in general. And so her love and passion for TnAchieves and how it transformed her life, like I trusted her and still trust her enough to know that what she said about it was how it was going to be. And so that's who sponsored me through, and that's kind of my reasoning why waiting, even though we weren't married and not even engaged. I mean, I knew in my heart that it was coming, and so did everybody else. So that's kind of why that I chose to go through when I did.
Okay, sweet. Love God's timing is always the best timing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't understand it either, right?
What'd you say?
God's timing isn't for us to understand.
Nope. I wish he would tell me his timeline, but that doesn't really work out that way. Okay, great. So, so the segue in, I guess, would be just tell me how you serve at your TnAchieves community, and then kind of break into text messaging and how you use it in the ministries that you're a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't see it on my end, but do we have anybody that's tuning in at all? I kind of want to make sure that we're calling.
Yep. So looks like we have about 8 people online right now and a couple of comments, but no questions yet.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. If you're just tuning in, I'm Jazmin Grimm with the Middle Tennessee TnAchieves community. And just want to welcome you here. So thanks for visiting and watching. So as far as text messaging goes, I know that the Middle Tennessee community uses an app that's called Remind, like remind me to do something, remind me to do X, Y, and Z. And it's a free app. It is designed for educational communities and institutions, but it's perfect for the Trace community because it's free. Yay, nonprofit life. And it's really user friendly. And so that's what the TnAchieves community uses. And then my husband and I also serve as the 4th day couple for Vida Nueva, which is the youth version of TnAchieves. And so that's where we use Remind. And I think it's relevant to generations across the board, especially for teenagers, but really for everyone, because it's harder to lose a text message in the shuffle than it is an email. I know we're all really guilty of click, 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 delete on our emails versus text messaging. You're probably more likely to open it. So Remind is a free app that we use, and it's limited to characters, just like, say, Twitter would be. And so you don't lose people as much, because a lot of times in emails, it's easier. I'm kind of wordy if you can't tell already. And so in emails, you'll type and type and type. In text messages, it's very limited to what your audience is going to be reading.
100%. Yeah. So totally agree with you. We were looking through some stats before this call, and it turns out that 98% of text messages, once they are sent, are open, whereas 90% are open within the first 3 minutes. And I know a number one argument that I've heard from people is, well, I don't really use text messaging. Well, they are definitely within the small percentage, because it's the number one tool for anybody under the age of 50 as far as communication. And over that, 98%, like I said, are open rate. That wasn't just teenagers poll. That was a poll amongst the world. So yes, 100% agree with you. If you're a community that's looking like you're just not reaching people, you're emailing them, you're calling them, and they're not responding back to you, the number one communication tool right now in the United States is text messaging. So this is a really relevant topic. What would you say some messages are that you craft within your community to just connect with people? TnAchieves, Vida Nueva, wherever.
Well, we primarily use it as a reminder.
Okay.
Right now, really in life and in general, there's so much that's always going on. I mean, you're hit with advertisement after advertisement. And so what we use it for is primarily as a reminder. Not so much as like, God has this in store for your life and whatnot, which is great, but chances are most people have some type of devotion app that they use, or they do their devotion in the morning or in the evening, but we use it for simply just reminders. And I think that's why a lot of people opt into it. And so how Remind works is you have just a generic code that you text on your phone, and then you opt in. And it's very, very simple. And you can put a poster up. You can get fancy with it. I'm a really crafty person, so I did something that was a little bit more eye-catching for it. But it's very easy to sign up for. And so putting it at the check-in when your teams are getting registered, depending on, kind of what the flow looks like for whichever community, it's very simple for people to opt in and to opt out. So just what overall kind of like an example of what we do would just be, we're stocking our storeroom for the upcoming weekend. And so the guys are bringing a certain item and the girls are bringing a certain item. And so sending out those reminders, or if the location has changed within the building that we meet in, we send those out. And just reminders and crucial information that people need to know. Which is why people read it and opt into it.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is headliners, not essays, which is kind of what you said before. And that character limit really constrains that down. I've like you said, emails, Facebook posts, I've seen them get really long, essay level. And so what I'm hearing from you is quick hits, time, location, what you should bring. That's awesome. Cool. And then can you talk a little bit about, I'm sure you've been held hostage on a group text before.
Yeah.
I have tons of group texts that I have to put on D&D, and then weeks after the weekend, somebody will respond and say, hey, just pray for me. And everybody on that group text that originally was told to line the walks is being reminded of this person's prayer request. So how does that work as far as like group messaging?
Well, I mean, I think we've all, and for those of you who are tuning in, I can't see it on my end, but you can probably raise your hand if you've been in one too many group texts.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get the reminders via text, and it's on the head to kind of send those text reminders. I do, if I ever do start a group text, try to put in there like, let's not respond all, because you want to be sensitive, one, to somebody needing prayer. And I do kind of want to just say that there's a lot of power, and I believe in the power of prayer. So somebody asking for prayer, never want to discredit that, and I know that you don't either. But at the same time, information gets lost in the shuffle. I know and we're still relatively new to the community, but especially when we were right into the community and a group text would get started, lots of information would just keep coming through that was not relevant to the first text. And so it was really hard for me as somebody that's working and back-to-back events to really want to scroll back up and know what's going on. So then I ended up texting our head saying, hey, can you give me a rundown, because I don't have time to go back through all the text messages. And a lot of times you don't even know who's on the thread, because when you're serving on a team that's large, you probably don't have their number in your phone, so it makes it even more difficult. So just as far as the text messaging goes, it's a great headliner and just crucial information that's not gonna, get lost in the shuffle.
That's awesome. So you brought up some really good points. So first, obviously it's free. Awesome. Hashtag nonprofit, right? Also, you don't get stuck into group text messaging. So if you send me a text, I can text you back, but I don't know everybody else that you sent it to, and they don't know that you sent it to me. And it's really easy to set up. So you mentioned the opt-in feature, which is cool. I also noticed, because before, of course, I want to do my due diligence, that you can import phone numbers. So you don't have to rely on them to just do the opt-in, which is awesome. I've noticed you might just not be collecting a lot of your members' numbers.
Right.
Whereas, shameless plug, we endorse JotForm at TDI. So if you are doing your online forms like you should be, not paper forms, you can just be exporting those attendee lists and then importing them in very easily. Just cut and paste from Excel, and you have all of your members' information. So one of the questions that we got that I think really ties into this is, if you know, what's kind of the difference between this text messaging provider and a GroupMe or Ringia or a board app?
Yeah, so great question. Who's the question from?
Susan, and she is my communications committee chair, also the wife of the new president of TDI, Dennis Farkas.
Oh, welcome. Hi, Susan. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the question. So it differs in that GroupMe, you actually have to have the app on your phone, and two, regularly check it. So if you're like me, you probably have a lot of apps on your phone. My husband uses GroupMe a lot. He's an athletic trainer, and he trains a lot of students. And so they use GroupMe because they're constantly using it almost as a way to connect with one another. And I'm not sure and familiar with the other ones that you we're talking about, but I will touch on GroupMe. So for me, I thought GroupMe was great until I stopped really checking it. And so what Remind does is it goes straight to your cell phone. So if your daughter or your son or your friend or your husband or wife texts you, it's going to come up in the same thread versus having to go one more place on your phone to actually check that, which is really, really nice, especially for people who have a lot going on, which everybody has a lot going on. If somebody says they don't have a lot going on, they're probably lying.
Yep.
So just knowing that it comes straight to your cell phone is really, really helpful. Like you said, what was the statistic? It was 98% of text messages get read in the first 3 minutes.
Yep.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to disappear on you. My laptop was about to die, so I had to switch on my plug.
That's
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. I was like, and it's over.
And I'm bleeding.
Yeah. Well, so we use Ringa in our community, and it's also free, which is great. One of the reasons that we use it, but to make up for that free, there's a bunch of ads like anything else would be. So definitely love this solution. Love that you talked about how it's for academic reasons, and that's part of the reason why. So a nonprofit to a nonprofit solution is what I'm hearing. So no ads. And that was one of our big complaints, was that anytime they try to send a text, then they'd have to see, like, you know, an image banner pop up of an ad. So it's awesome that they don't have to encounter that with this solution. And that probably be the number one difference between Ringa and then GroupMe, what you're just saying.
What's it called that y'all use? I'm trying. We're in Tennessee, so we speak a little bit slower. So.
Oh, sorry. Well, and I'm trying not to pick up your accent. I want your super cool, sweet accent. It's Ringa. So it's ring, like I called you, R-I-N-G, and then Y-A.
Oh, Ringa.
Merged together. Yep.
So is it kind of like GroupMe?
It's kind of like GroupMe, but if I text you and you don't have the app, you still get the text.
Okay.
And you can make, like GroupMe, you can make channels within the application. So how we used it in a real life example was we had a heads chat, and then the heads had chats within. So a kitchen chat, a dorm chat. Yeah, it was a good, and same deal, you upload it. Another difference is that I really like about your text messaging is if I wanted to upload a bulk, so let's say I uploaded 50 people and then I needed to upload another 50 people, I would have to do that manually, adding one person at a time, or deleting out the Ringa and uploading all 100 people, which is kind of a pill. Where with your dashboard, or a dashboard is another term for just the back end, you log in, you can edit. I could add or change, like if somebody didn't have any more interest in text messaging, I could delete them out really easily, or I could bulk upload really quickly. So that's another great feature of your guys' Remind. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy it. And you can actually, I will say this, you can send graphics through Remind as well. I create graphics, and I'm a big believer in graphics because we're, as humans, I always say humans, as humans, we're very visual people. And so when you see something, it's a lot easier to kind of put into your brain. And so you can send graphics through Remind as well, which is really helpful. And if somebody responds back, so say, Matt, who's my husband, or I send out a text message, they reply back, say it's one of the candidates, or not candidates, if it's one of the team members, and they say, hey, I won't be at the meeting this week, or if they say, I can't serve this weekend, so sorry, then we can let whoever needs to know, the head, know that they're not going to be serving. And then it doesn't go to everybody. Nobody else sees it. So then it's that confidentiality piece, because 99% of the time, you probably don't want everybody else to know that you're not serving, or for whatever reason. And so it's just that one-on-one thing as well, the confidentiality piece.
Okay, so Ricky just asked, he has 4,000 members in his community, go Ricky, and he would like to know exactly how that kind of import opt-in works. So what we outlined was 2 different solutions. So the one is you don't have their phone numbers, or maybe, you know, they listed their home phone on their application and you need a text message or a cell phone device to text to. So Jazmin outlined a short code where you could opt in, and how I outlined was a upload from Excel spreadsheet. So you would need first name, last name, phone number, copy and paste that into the solution. And then to cover your booty as far as legality, you do have to allow an opt-out link, and that is where it covers you. So where you can get into trouble is if you send a text message and you don't have an opt-out link. That's when you can have some snafus of legalities. But if you have that opt-out link, then you don't have to rely on them to opt in. Right. Clear as mud? Okay. Okay, cool.
You covered it.
Okay, so I really like that you mentioned that you're a graphic designer, and that you make graphic images. So I want to talk about, so you recently had an event with VN where you and Haley Bennett kind of did some cool collaboration on the color war thing with VN. And it looked like it had an awesome turnout. So I want you to just kind of explain maybe what that event was and why you decided to have a cool event like that to kind of promote VN and engage with your, they're not called Pescadores. What are they called for VN?
The candidates? I mean, not the candidates, the team members?
Yeah. What's like the term? It's not Pescadores. It's,
We'll just call them Pescadores.
okay. We'll call it Pescadores. So, they're down to the weekend. What'd you say?
We call them butterflies.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I didn't know if that was surprise. Okay. Spoiled. So yeah, so you made this event. Can you talk about some of the promotions you did leading up to the event, which I think is really important, and how that was really beneficial to just like overall creating buzz and just communicating the fun aspect of the ministry as well?
Yeah, so let's see, I guess it was 2 Saturdays ago, hosted a color war. And if you've ever done a color run or anything of the sort, it's powdered color paint. I thought I might have some in here. I know that'd be crazy, but that's just my life. But instead of it actually being paint, it's a powder. And so what we did, we put our heads together at our council meeting and just thought, what can we do to engage our youth? I think no matter what you're doing, whether it's VN, whether it's Trace, you have to think of your target audience and who you're trying to engage. And that's a very fun, interactive type of event. And so honestly, that was the first event that was put on in our community where we really honestly sat down and said, what could we do that would engage our youth in a way that it was completely 100% geared toward them? Okay. And the feedback that we got from our youth is, and I think there was probably like 7 or 8 of them afterwards just talking, and they were saying, this is the first event that we've had where it was fun to come hang out. And people, no matter what walk of life you're at, no matter what generation you're in, like Jesus needs to be relatable, and Jesus needs to be your friend, and the Holy Spirit is called to be a guide to us. And so that was our intention behind the color war, was to make something fun that didn't on the surface scream Jesus, but we were able to show Jesus through the event itself. And so what we did, and it was very affordable, which you always kind of have to think about when it comes to running a nonprofit and whatnot. And so I think we ordered 25 pounds of the color war paint for like $100 off of Amazon. And so we created a graphic. We posted it out on Instagram. I printed flyers for the, there's my accent. I printed flyers for the event. The best thing that you can do for an event, and I do this in my professional career as well, I plan corporate events, is always putting everything out there for people to where they can never tell you that they didn't know about something. So always having a flyer, always having a post about it. And if we want to talk about social media later on, we can, and scheduling social media posts. But that's what we did, is we branded it in a way to where we knew the audience that we were targeting, and we knew who we wanted to reach, and the message that we were trying to send. And just to be transparent, it was successful. Was it as successful as we would have hoped? Honestly, no. And I think not that it was a fail, but don't be afraid to fail, because if you don't fail, then you're never going to learn. Exactly. And I think that's what where a lot of people go wrong, is they don't do things because maybe it's done always the way that it should have always been done. Yeah. And even though it's still not working, they're afraid to try something new because it could fail. But reality is there's a chance that everything's going to fail. And you can't be afraid of failure. And if something were to fail, not that the event failed, But I think we probably could have had a larger crowd turnout. But it was the first event in years to have been done to engage the community. So that's just encouragement to anybody, whether you're a newer Trace Diaz community, or you've been around for a long time, or you have 4,000 people in your community, just not being afraid to try new things. But the graphics were really helpful, and just being personable and inviting people one-on-one was definitely a great approach, and being intentional in that.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you brought up a lot of really great points. So kind of like an umbrella recap would be, you moved outside of the traditional cookie cutter VN, or even, it could be comparable to a Trace Diaz scenario, which is typically host a weekend, a month or two later, have a sequela, maybe another sequela, and then have a weekend. And that's it. And there's really no engagement. And then you really rely on people to meet in reunion groups or Bible studies, go to church, and that's it. So what I'm hearing is you guys saw a need. You came together, prayed about it. Number one, awesome. And identified that need, asked around, and came up with a great solution, which was to have fun and market with all the tools that you outlined, which were Instagram and text messaging, and just being an awesome, nice person and inviting people personally, because I think we do miss that a lot in our society. We do mass text, mass emails, and call it good, and we miss that face-to-face. Hey, Jazmin, would you like to come? Oh, okay, cool. Like,
yeah.
So to me, I know that you're like, I wish we had more people, so I'm not hearing that as a negative at all. But what I'm hearing is it's just like it's a steamroll. So now we have more momentum, and we're going to build upon that later.
Yeah, and so something else I do want to make note of that we did is during the event, sometimes I think when you get in organizations or in business, you get a plan and you think that you have to stick to the plan. And I mean, I do that. I'm like, this is the plan. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to play capture the flag. We set up this huge field, just to put it into perspective. We set up this huge field of just boxes and just things for kids to hide behind. And then with the group that we had, which was still a great turnout, we knew, okay, how are we going to be intentional in this? So being flexible in that. So we changed it to a part one, color war part one. And so what we're doing is we're having a part two at the end of our victory gathering, which is it's the same thing as a sequela. That's what VN would call it. But if you have a sequela and say you tried something new and it didn't work, just being flexible in that moment to say, okay, how are we going to spin this to make it work to where we can still utilize our resources, such as the paint that we spent money on. And so now we're going to do a part two, and then we'll have the pictures that we took from that color war, the videos we took, which could segue into taking pictures and videos and all of that. But it's just really important to kind of fly by the seat of your pants in the moment and not just do things the way that you planned them, even if they are new. Because the color war was something that we did that was new, but even though it was new, in that moment, we had to make a call of, okay, do we do it how we predetermined that we were going to do it, or do we kind of spin it? And it was cool to see what the Lord had in store, because at the end, I got to sit down with a lot of the girls and a lot of our team and council and just talk about what the Lord's doing in their life, and get to know them one-on-one. And a lot of times, if you have a larger crowd, you can't do that. So just looking for the little things that God's doing in the moment, and not just sticking to what you've always done.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I love what you said about, meeting with them and connecting with them with Jesus, because at the end of the day, love that they're attending VN, love that they're attending Trace Diaz, love that they're attending church, but you really just want them to connect with Jesus. Those are all just tools to connect with Jesus. So what I don't want listeners to hear on this is, well, we're not going to have a color war, but that they can have the flexibility to do something different. If it's not working, do it differently.
Yeah, and doing something that maybe on the surface doesn't look like a traditional church environment, but because Jesus doesn't always have to look like, here's my Bible and I'm going to show you the Gospels. Like, Jesus is in the supernatural, and he's in the relational more than anything. Building those relationships and in those relationships, that's where you're going to see people want to come back, because life is all about relationships. And if you don't build those relationships with the people in your community, and it's just, here's some Palanca, I hope that you come back, and then there's never that point of contact afterward, everybody wants to feel like they can relate. Not everybody's going to relate to a worship service. Not everybody's going to relate to a potluck. It's just taking that one step further of connecting with them. So.
Definitely, totally. So you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned it, that you are an event planner for corporate events with your company. So can you kind of talk about what does Jazmin look like professionally? What is that social media marketing? Kind of tell us what you do basically.
Yeah. So I work for the Gallatin, Tennessee Chamber of Commerce. Gallatin is located about 27 minutes outside of Nashville.
27, great.
Nashville, yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to put in a nutshell all that I do, but the things that I do that are really relevant to the community, the being in Tres Dias, primarily the Tres Dias community, because I don't really interact with a lot of youth in my job. So in my spare time, I spend a lot of time with youth. But at my job, I spend a lot of time with connecting with the business community. And so to break it down, I do marketing. So the things that fall under marketing is mass emailing, creating graphics. Not necessarily a graphic designer. I'm an amateur. If my sister was watching this, she would laugh because she's like a legit graphic designer for like a very large company. But I do graphics, and then plan events. And then also for the second part of really what I do is build relationships, and heavily that are focused on communication. So letting people know what's available to them. So a chamber of commerce, a lot of people think is part of the city, part of the state, is a government relations. It's not. So we're a nonprofit, or we're actually a nonprofit. Although we're not like a Habitat for Humanity where our funds are raised through, say, charitable cause, we're actually, our money is raised through our membership. And so I say that because everything we do depends on the people that we have relationships with. And if those people don't know what they're paying for, if they don't know, and they don't feel communicated with, they're not going to want to be a member of our chamber. And so that's kind of my primary responsibility, is making sure that businesses nonprofits, organizations feel supported, and that I'm communicating our events that we have planned to them, and how we can help grow and promote their business.
Okay, great. So what would be like, give me an example of a corporate event that you've planned, how that kind of works for promotion.
Yeah. So we are currently trying to think of one that's the most relative. We have a special corporate event every single month out of the year except for 2 months. The last really large one that I planned was called the Gauntlet Games. So it's essentially kind of like an adult build day. And it was to create team building within a business or an organization. So the planning that goes into that is really important, to make sure that people know what the event is. Anytime you are planning anything, whether it's a Tres Dias community event or it's an upcoming weekend, is so people know what the event is. They know what the organization is. And so sitting down and having a team of people who feel supported, who feel like they're being empowered in their giftings, which I think is really important in the Tres Dias community in general, is making sure it's not just a warm body, because that's not what the Lord's called us to do. We are called to walk out our purpose and walk out our giftings. And when you do that, you feel empowered. And so that's kind of the way that I try to lead in our events. And so this was the second year running that we did it. The first year that we did it, it got put in our state magazine, our state newspaper rather. All the media covered it. And it was because we did a lot of heavy marketing on the front end, for the event. And so we've got an upcoming event that's called Grit, Grace, and Grub, which is geared toward our restaurants and helping to grow and promote and raise awareness of their location. And so that's kind of a hurdle in business, and it's a hurdle in all communities really, is knowing how to raise awareness that you exist and what you do. So just conveying that message in the best way and figuring that out is kind of what my main responsibilities are.
Okay, great. And then can you maybe talk about like a timeline? So let's say this event was in May. When did you start promoting this event? How far back?
So we try to start getting the word out. Like, for instance, we have a bridal show that's coming up in January.
Okay.
That's geared toward our vendors and our local, say you're a venue or a caterer or a florist, and that's what the event is intended for. We start promoting, let's see, what month are we in? We're in August. So we started promoting that 4 months ago.
Okay.
So really trying to go either a year out is great, but like 8 to 9 months is ideal.
Okay.
Because if you go too far out, people forget about it. So
Yep.
you want to do kind of like this soft announcement of, hey, we're doing this thing. But closer to time, like the event I was telling you about for the restaurants, that event is coming September the 8th. So now is game time. So next week I'm going to be going around taking posters, taking flyers, having that print in your hand, because no matter how digital of age that we're in right now, you have to have both. You have to have print, and then you also have to have digital. And I think that really helps to bridge that generational gap that's happening. Is a lot of millennials are saying, well, it's just all, digital. We need to have everything on social media and all of this. And that's not the case. You have to have the print as well. And then for the other generations and bridging that gap, you have to have both. So I know me, although I'm a millennial, I want a print flyer. I want to have a print calendar. So there's just something that I don't think will ever fade out in terms of marketing as it relates to print. I mean, statistics do show that print advertising is starting to go away, but the more that you see something, the more that your mind registers it, even if you don't even like consciously register it.
Definitely. Yep. I read a stat in college that you have to be touched or, encounter the ad 7 times before you finally make a purchase.
Yeah.
So just like you said, you were invited for years to attend a Trace DS weekend. It wasn't just one and okay, I went. And I know that's the case for some people. They're the anomaly.
Absolutely.
So, okay, great. So this is all like great information. I've been taking notes. My one page is all filled up here. Kind of tell me how what you have learned from the corporate event planning can translate into a Trace DS, because Trace DS is really an event twice a year, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think with, for those of us that are in church leadership or have been for years, you never want to you don't think that you want to view the church as a business. Because it doesn't seem spiritual or it doesn't seem, right. But the church in essence is a business. And the things that are happening and why you have me here today to talk about, the generational gaps or the lack of communication is very relevant in everybody's walk of life right now, as it relates to business, as it relates to nonprofits. And so some things, just some takeaways that I would have is, and it may not even be as much a tangible thing, is just to be intentional in everything that you do, whether the message that you're conveying is knowing the message that you want to convey, knowing the audience that you're trying to reach, and then following up with candidates. So once they go through the weekend, like say I have a meeting with a potential chamber member.
Okay.
And I give them all this incredible information, tell them how it's going to change their business, but then I never follow up with them. So
yeah,
they're not going to join the chamber. They're not going to want to do it. I didn't follow up with them, so they're just going to think, oh, this person just spent X amount of time with me and now they didn't have any follow up. And life happens, but being intentional, if you feel the Lord is guiding you to have a candidate go through, just being intentional in that, and following up. So, and also it kind of really pertains to being intentional in your walk and in your relationships with team members as well. If you know somebody that you connected with on a weekend 2 or 3 times ago and they haven't served, reach out to them. Don't be afraid to reach out. Taking the approach of, why haven't you been serving? Probably could scare somebody off.
Yeah.
Or if they miss a meeting or two, don't, say, why haven't you been at meetings? But just being intentional in that, what's been going on with you? How are things? How's life? Everyone wants to feel important. Sure. In every walk of life. So that would be a takeaway that I would hope to impart, is just to be intentional, and intentional in your message, whether that's marketing and promoting your event, or it's intentional in having a conversation. Relationships are built, and you get the word out a lot more by talking to somebody. I do want to say this. So I've actually had a couple times where I've been meeting with potential chamber members, and, say I've been serving on a weekend, or a weekend's coming up and I've spent a long night, like creating Kalanka, like we all have. And I bring that up in conversation. Hey, have you ever heard of Trace Diaz? Not to recruit them to go through Trace, but just to really bring up that conversation of, have you heard of it? Yeah. And 2 or 3 different times, people have looked at me like literally for a solid 10 seconds, their face was just, and it was because they had gone through Trace Diaz, and then we ended up making the connection of, oh my goodness, you went through Trace Diaz. This was your experience. Oh, I haven't served in a while. You should come back and serve. So just never being afraid to bring it back up. Because never would I have thought, if I brought that up, that it would end up leading to somebody actually having gone through.
Yeah.
So just bringing it up. So
sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, building the relationship first, not coming in with the intention of, I want you to attend a weekend, or I want you to serve a weekend. Kind of my bad would be your story turned out well. My story, not so well. I had learned that there was a gal that got offended on the weekend. I mean, if you want to bring out the worst of women, don't let them sleep, and let them serve consecutively, or, different, less hours than normal. And there was some kind of an offense that happened on the weekend. And so I reached out to this lady. She hadn't served for a while. And I just said, hey, would you like to go get a cup of coffee with me sometime? And she responded back and said, yes, that'd be awesome. And then I hit her back again and said, okay, great, because I'd like to talk to you about coming back and serving. And she read that as me only reaching out to her because I wanted her to serve. And I should have just not said anything. I mean, I could have just gone and got coffee. I didn't have to have the loaded weapon. So I agree 100% with you that it's relationships first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, and kind of a practical way to put that is, we all have those people who have been our friends on Facebook for a long time, and then all of a sudden you get a message from them in your inbox, and they're working like a pyramid scheme, and they want you to join their team, or come to one of their, and there's nothing that turns you off more than that. So I think just making sure you've had some type of point of contact with them before reaching out is important as well.
Definitely. Well, so I have 3 questions that are looping back to text messaging for you. And then I have your big question that I asked you before our call that I hope you've been pondering on. So we've had a couple more questions. So, and some of these I know we've answered before, but if they're just tuning in, I know that they might have missed it. So the first question was, is there a max length to the text messages?
Okay. So the max length to the text messages, I believe, is 160. And so it's just similar, 160 or 140. But it's very much so like Twitter. And so having those, the limited amount of message that you can send and having those headliners really helps to get that message conveyed. Yep. Because it doesn't get lost in it. I mean, a lot of times when I even send emails where I've blind copy a lot of people and it's only supposed to go to one person, I send the email will be like, say this long, but I'll bold certain things because I know that people are only reading one or two different things. Yep. And so that's what I love about the text messaging is that it's one going straight to their phones. So you don't have to open up an app like GroupMe or like the Ringya, but you get to just go solely to your text messaging screen. So that's what I like about it.
And just to clarify, 140 or 160 characters and spaces do count. So not to say that you should.
And so something that I meant to mention is, and that I teach our chamber members about is just being informal, because believe it or not, I'm a very formal person when it comes to writing. And so when you're informal, whether it's in a social media post or it's especially in a text message, just being very informal. You can use emojis. Emojis are something I have a lot of people who are in my life that are about 3 times my age that, well, not 3. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. 2.5, that are using emojis. So it just shows you that everybody likes emojis, whether you're 16, 27 like me, or you're almost 80 years old. So that's just something that's relatable. Again, it comes back to that intentionality and just being relatable. So you can put those in the text messages as well. And I know a lot of our adults have said, oh, I love, and it limits the characters too. So if you're asking somebody to bring something to the sequela and they can't have nuts, you can put no, and then you can put the little emoji nuts. And then it helps to save some of those characters that you would use. Because you do kind of have to code the messages because you can't say too much in the 140 to 160. So
definitely super smart. Okay, the next question is, what is some of the reporting capabilities that Remind has?
Some of the reporting capabilities?
Yeah, so I saw on the site that there's a way to see open rates, to see like if they forwarded on the text to anybody. You can attach read receipts, which is creepy, but I like it. You can see if your message was read. Yeah. Is there anything else to just kind of see maybe who opted in, who opted out, things like that?
Yeah. No, I think you can, just like on a text messaging thread, you can actually look and see who's opted out, because if somebody unsubscribes from, say, an email, you're going to be able to see who unsubscribes, and that's just the legality behind it. So you have to be able to opt in and opt out, and it tells you who opts in and opts out because you need to know that so you don't opt them in again. Yes. Because, again, it comes back down to the legality behind it, because if you try to opt somebody back in, say I have one of our candidates who just went through, they want to be on the text messaging thread because they want to come to the sequela, and I put them in there, and then they're like, oh, I don't want this, and they opt out. Yep. I have their number in my phone, so I may forget that they opted out, but I may try to opt them back in, but it helps so that you know who opted out of there. So you're not, looking at legal charges, which hopefully you wouldn't be, but
good Lord, yes, we would hope so. So what I'm hearing is just like the basic stuff. So check who read it, check who opted out. Beyond that, I don't really know what else you would really need, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and also to see, and I'm looking at it right now just to see if I'm like missing anything. Being able to know who's opening the text messages is really helpful, just like it would be an email. Because you want to know if people are responding. And it's a good way to have that data. Say you have, accountability is very important in ministry in general. Now you're dealing with volunteers, so you can't be, too crazy about it. But it helps to say, if someone says, well, I didn't come to this meeting, or I didn't do this, this thing because I didn't get information about it. It helps to be able to go back and say, well, has your number changed? Yep. Want to make sure we have your correct information on file, because it looks like the number we sent to, whether it was opened or not open. That way you can go back and make sure that there's no communication issues, whether they're coming from your end or the teammates' end as well.
Great. Okay, last question. So Kevin LeMay from Alamo City Tres Dias asks, what package do you use? it looks like everything's free, but he wanted to double check and make sure if there was a package that you can pay for that maybe has more functionality, if you've seen that.
That's a great question. I'm not sure about that. I know that we use the free version. I do not believe that there is an upgraded version, but I can look into that. And can you ask him maybe I can't, Kevin, what's his name?
Kevin LeMay,
okay.
like Lemay.
Okay, Kevin, I can't see your question on my end. Samantha has that. If you could just provide her with your email address, I'd be happy to look into that and email you and let you know. Or you can give her your number and then I'll text you. See? Texting is the thing.
See how I did that? Yep. Perfect. Well, from what I can see when you were talking, I very rudely was looking through the packages, and I don't see any option of an increased package. Also, I don't know if you can tell us this information, but how many people would you say are in your account? Like how many people have been uploaded? I think that'll help them understand.
So since my husband and I became the 4th day couple, what I will advise you to do is, I did have a little bit of trouble on the front end with it because there used to be another group owner, and somehow when she stopped being the group owner, it did not transfer over to me. I don't think that was the app problem. I think that was a user error. Either me or her, but it was probably me. And so I would just, I think on our old one, because we just got a new one not long ago, probably like less than 6 months ago. But our community for VN is smaller. I would say 200 is what used to be on there. And so we're starting to build that back up. But our Tres Diaz community, the Middle Tennessee Tres Diaz, does use Remind as well. So Brad Martin, he is on the council, and he is the one who sends out the text reminders, and he's been very happy with it. And we have a very large community of folks who are involved in the Middle Tennessee community. So that's what he uses as well. I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many, but I think it's safe to say quite a few hundred.
Okay. Cool. So what I'm hearing, Kevin, is that there is no variety of package levels. You get every feature for free with this software. If you hear if we find out otherwise, we'll let you know. But for right now, that is what we're seeing right on the website, is that there's not a different level of packages.
Yeah. And again, it sounds like you're just tuning in, Kevin. And so it's intended for educational institutions. And so you can add a lot of people onto your mailing list, thousands of people, because elementary schools, private schools, they use those here in the community. The couple that was the 4th day couple prior to my husband and I I think she's a school principal, and she was using it for her whole community, and there were like 3,000 people, I think, on one of her mailing lists.
Okay.
So it definitely reaches a large span of people.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we had one trickle in while you were talking, so you're just popular. So this is Harvey Sprague from Spirit of Oklahoma Tres Diaz, and he asked, what is kind of the difference between an email, so using email, or text messaging? What would be the impact of using text messaging over email?
Yeah, so what we talked about is, we're all guilty of getting emails where you go through and you're like, especially like on Monday mornings, how many of us go, okay, this is not important, and you click. I've done it with Tres Diaz. Don't tell anybody. And then I delete them. And it's easier to delete a text, or it's easier to delete an email rather than deleting a text message, because chances are you're going to open a text message. And then the message, second point, is that it's easily conveyed. So it's a limited amount of characters, and then you get to go through and you read it, and it's very easily conveyed. On an email, sometimes you have to read a couple different times to figure out what they're trying to say, because there's a lot of fluff in between. There's literally no fluff in these messages. I'm a fluffy person, and I can't put any fluff except for emojis in any of them. So.
And
Yeah.
I think it's also cool to point out that sometimes I'll send out emails and I'll say, it was in the email, didn't you get it? Well, it goes into my promotions folder, or it goes into my spam. Where text messaging, it goes straight to your phone. There's no spam filter, ... yet. But right now you can just go straight to the user, definitely. Yeah. Okay.
And again, something else we talked about is group texting and how it eliminates that, so that you get the text message to your phone, and it's simply used just as what we use it for, as is a reminder. And I would encourage anybody that is using it to use it as a reminder. Get your team fees in. We're selling t-shirts. Make sure that you bring your candidate form. So making sure that it's just the basics, and who owns the group, which is what it's called, knows that it's not to be used for anything other than just a message and a headline.
Exactly. Well, and I know I can't speak for other communities, but I know our community will do one big group email. Yeah. And for whatever reason, they put them in the CC, not the BCC, and it'll be 4 years later and we get an email, when's team meeting? And it's everyone gets that email because they hit reply all. So love it. So, okay. Before this call, I asked Jazmin to think about what would be 3 things that she would tell communities to help them with their growth. So earlier this week, we did a poll on the Facebook page that asked communities, what is your #1 pain point? Is it reaching new candidates, or is it engaging pescadores? And Jazmin has already pointed out some great solutions that your communities should be doing. But I asked her to tell us 3 things that she would tell you as these community viewers that you need to start doing right now to start engaging and getting people to come to your weekend and then come back and serve. So she's been pondering on that. I didn't give her very much time.
No, it's okay. So one thing we kind of touched on earlier is just being intentional in everything that you do. And that sounds vague, but it's really not. Just following up with candidates and making sure, I don't know if it's a task force or if it's a committee that's outside of, out of your board, whatever it is, your secretariat, just having a team of people that are dedicated to following up to a certain extent. I realize that you can't follow up all the time, but just being intentional in that. And then also with the emails that you send out, I don't know if, what system do y'all use? Do you have a mass emailing system, Sam?
Yep, we use MailChimp.
Okay, so y'all use MailChimp. I know that that's free. And then Constant Contact is what we use for the chamber. And it's free up to a certain amount of people who subscribe to it. And so it's very user friendly. If you send out a newsletter, just making sure that that newsletter is just 2 scrolls. So if you have your cell phone and you're looking through an email, you want to just make sure that that email is literally 1, 2, because any longer than that, nobody's going to read it.
Yep.
And then also in those emails, putting a link to say if you have the capability to have people fill out their applications online, if you have the capability for them to pay their dues online, or their team fee dues. I'm sorry, one hat to the next, business back to Tracy. But having them pay their team fees online, just making it so easy for people is so important. And I know that I really try to do that for other people, because all of you who are watching this, everybody's got a lot going on. And so if you're reading through a newsletter and your community sends out a newsletter, just putting a button in there to where it's pay my team fee. And when they click it, it's easy because it takes you to the link. And if we needed to do a tutorial on like the simplicity of it, I've taught 2 people today on just creating a URL. If you go and if you type in tinyurl.com, you can create a custom URL for your flyers, for your, what have you, and you can put your Tracy's community. So in our instance would be MTTD, Middle Tennessee Tracy, and then you can put the number, and then you can put whichever number weekend that you're on. And then when they click that, it's going to take them automatically to how to pay their dues. And so highly recommend that because it just makes it simple for people. Definitely. And if you don't have a PayPal account, I would highly recommend that you get a PayPal account. I know something that's been up in the air with our community has been, well, you have to pay a fee if you're a business. There is an option on there where it's a friends and family, and then you don't have to pay for it. And I don't know, have you covered this in any of your other Facebook Lives? I don't want to bore everybody.
So basically all of your awesome points are just being affirmed from the videos that we made previously. So I hope they know I didn't pay you any money.
Okay. No, nobody being paid, but you can send it later. But just little things like that make your graphics look better, that make your community look more organized. And I honestly think it makes it look more intentional because you're caring enough to respect somebody's time. Definitely. Because right now in life, we have so many things that are pulling at our time, and saying no is becoming more important now, I think, more than ever. Maybe it's just coming with me and maturity because I don't say no enough. But just making sure to honor people in their time and creating ways for them to join the community and get on board without having to jump through a ton of hoops.
Yeah. To get involved. I think that's perfect. Well, awesome. I mean, we've covered so many topics, and you did exactly what I wanted you to do. You went above and beyond what I needed. So thank you so much. I think we covered all of the questions that we had from the live stream. If you missed this video, if you want to share it with your community, this will be on YouTube, and it is also being stored on Facebook. So share it with your community. If you know that there's someone in your community that needs to see this video, share it to their Facebook page and help get the word out. So Jazmin, thank you so much. And I'm so honored that you were able to be part of this video with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a personal email. I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you, Jazmin.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.